Hello and welcome, and thank you everyone for joining us today for Holler Agency's Customer Experience Live conversation for brand leaders and marketers and people who are passionate advocates for customer experience. I'm your host, Alex Allwood. I'm the author of the book Customer Experience is the Brand, and I am CEO of the customer experience company, the Holler Agency. Now, if you'd like a complimentary copy of my book, settle in and I'll give you some more information on how you can receive a complimentary copy later in the show. Our first guest panellist today is Pete Kafka. He is the former head of marketing for Cellarmasters. Now, Pete is an experienced marketer and with over 10 years experience. He's a passionate consumer advocate, and he has the ability to conceive, influence and implement innovative omni-channel marketing strategies.
Well, sounds impressive.
It does, doesn't it? James Forbes, who's just calling in now, and but I will just explain his expertise. James is a marketing and philanthropy director for Nature Conservation Trust. Sorry about that, James. I've said it over and over again in my videos when I was recording the promotions for the show, and every time I got tongue-tied. He's a specialist in that field and works for private landholders to protect significant areas of biodiversity under the Conservation Common. James has over 10 years experience in the not-for-profit sector, also in marketing and fundraising. And guess what? Beyond this, James has developed his first feature film based around the death of the Russian royal family in 1918. We also have Jane, who's just come online, and I'll get them seated in just one moment. And Jane Headon is Avaнаde's Director of Digital Strategy. Jane is an experienced consultant in digital strategy, information management and collaboration, social media change, and change management inside the enterprise. Jane is passionate about raising the bar for customer experience and is renowned for excellent stakeholder relationship management skills and communication between business and IT. Pretty good credentials there for our third panel for live conversations. I'm just going to bring both James and Jane into Jane, I've got a cord. That's all I've got of yours. But hello, James. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Alex. I finally managed to master the technology, I think.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I'll hang up now. I think I'm good.
Now, Jane, how are you going? Because we've just got a floor and a cord for you. Yes, panning round, and we're close.
Okay.
Hi, Jane.
Hi there. Now, just tell me how this camera's going.
Okay, just angle it up so we can see your face, because we've just got more bosom than face at the moment. Yes. There we go.
Okay.
Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us, and a big shout out to our customer experience community who have joined us today for our lunchtime show. I have introduced you. I don't know if you heard, but I have introduced you all and welcomed you to the show. So I think we'll get right straight down to it. And our topic that we're talking about today is keeping the brand promise. So I just wanted to open up with just a statement from Coca-Cola's president, Mahatma Kent, who says if a good brand promise, if a brand is a promise, then a great brand is a promise kept. And how relevant is that? In great promises connect the brand purpose, the values and the positioning to communicate what customers can expect to receive in the interactions with the brand, and why the brand is worth considering. Sometimes find the brand promise in the strapline, and the promise really signifies the value that's created when the customer engages, and so I think it's relevant to say that today's brand leaders need to pay close attention to the gaps in what's promised by the brand and what's experienced by the customer. And this is really backed up with a study from management consulting firm Bain that found 80% of companies believe they offer a superior proposition. However, only 8% of customers held the same view. And they coined the term delivery gap. So I'd like to kick off today's discussion. What does a brand promise mean to its customers in 2016? And Pete, what's your thoughts on that? What does a brand promise mean to customers in 2016?
Yeah, so I'm going to feel that customers actually take a brand promise quite literally in this day and age, and are looking for something that's quite authentic and stands by what it means. I think today's consumer is so well educated with the likes of the internet at their disposal, and their expectations are a lot higher. So if you're going to have a brand promise and put something out there that you're going to deliver, you are promising to deliver on, you better be delivering on it, because the customers of today won't have much patience otherwise.
Yes, yeah. James, what is your thoughts? You're in a really hard space in the not-for-profit. What's your what's consumers' expectations for not-for-profits these days?
Oh, look, Alex, I think they're no different to expectations in the for-profit space, quite frankly. And if anything, if the Quiet Media Week, when they go on Bash a Charity Day, is anything to go by, the expectations are quite often even higher around what the charity says it's going to do and how it's spending your money and what percentage of that is going on administration, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the challenges are the same. The issues with us often are just about resourcing, but there's umpteen great examples of fantastic charity brands out there that are delivering on their promise. So I'd agree with what Pete had to say. I think it's about being authentic. It's about being real. And in my space, that challenge is delivering a really great impact report or impact statement or impact letter about how your money's been spent, what it's doing, where it's going. So that's where the authenticity sits.
And do you think Shane Ward's foundation can come back from oblivion?
Oh, look, I have no idea. I think there's bigger problems there than whether or not it can come back from oblivion. Look, I think all that things like that do is give what is largely a space that is very well regulated by the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. It gives most of us a very bad name, and it gives the media an opportunity to go on a bit of a rampage again about how bad the charities are at spending your money or wasting your money. So, look, I don't really have anything further to add on Shane Ward's foundation.
Jane, what's your thoughts on what a brand promise means to customers in 2016?
Sure. So I concur with James and Peter on their comments, and certainly around authenticity. But I think the answer lies in the title of your book, Alex, where you say customer experience is the brand, which is something we all recognise these days. So if customer experience is the brand, then the brand promise is the promise around the customer experience. And that's the sum of every interaction the customer has with you across every channel and every touch point within their journey. So ensuring that you can live up to expectations that are growing and changing every day is the promise.
Yeah. Consumers' expectations are certainly very high these days. And I believe they're increasing because of the likes of Apple and Facebook and Amazon and those sort of brands who do personalisation and customer service, and they're very, very well. What brands that you've come across from both a personal perspective and a marketing perspective are doing well at delivering their promise?
I would have to say, and great examples of Apple, American Express, and you just gave there, Alex. For me, I think it's about setting expectations and not over promising, like within your realm. Those companies you mentioned are obviously massive companies with great amounts of support and can deliver on their awesome experience. So I think within your own realm, it's about setting expectations of what you can deliver on. So I think where I see great customer experiences in this day and age is generally with startups who don't have the red tape or the bound by all the political nightmares that you can be in a big organisation.
Yes.
They put out small promises and they generally keep them. So like Jimmy Brings is a great example of a small startup delivering alcohol in under 30 minutes. You can't get much more simple than that.
Yes.
And he delivers on that every time. So I think that has just grown exponentially over the last few months, and it's a very popular service around my area.
Yes, because I did a straw poll before coming online to our staff members here, and two brands that resonated with the people in the company were UE. Now UE is a smaller version of a lot of the large insurance agencies, and Rochelle talked about their promise. We get you is their promise, and she said that right from when you go online right through to the onboarding, everything is personalised. And that's a great example of how a brand is, using their brand promise in their strapline, but then also delivering it across every touch point in the journey. And the other one that David mentioned was Audi, and we had a look at Audi's strapline. And it doesn't have a promise there in regards to what you're going to receive. It does have a promise around technology, but he said right from going online to purchase the car, right through to customer service. Because it's a prestige vehicle, you have a high expectation that you're going to get the very best in terms of excellence. And they deliver on that promise right throughout the journey. So that was our two from the company. Jane, what's your take on brands that are delivering the brand promise well?
Yes, it's interesting. I did a straw poll this week also on great brands, and Audi popped up for a couple of people that I spoke to as well. But I'm going to go with Lorna Jane. So Lorna Jane is an activewear brand, an Australian brand, and they have a great philosophy around helping women live more beautiful, active lives and making the most of their lives. And they have a tagline around move, nourish and believe. And what I like about how they execute on this brand is that, they have an online community. They are present in just about every channel I'd expect their customers would be, including channels like Snapchat, for example. They have a wonderful two-way exchange on social forums. And they take this promise around living more beautiful lives into health and nutrition, for example. So it's a brand that, for me, transcends the product, which is activewear, and activewear you buy in a store, to a philosophy in how you live your life. And everywhere you see Lorna Jane, in every channel, the images, the voice, the way they interact with customers is also consistent and true to their values. So I think they're a bit of a shining local example of how to do it well.
Excellent. James, what's your thoughts?
Look, I've got a couple of thoughts. One is Google, and specifically their AdWords branch, if I can put it that way. And the reason for that is that to go back to the start of the conversation and where we think brand promises are, and I think Pete mentioned the gap that exists, or the gaps that exist. I'll give you an example. I got a call I use Google AdWords to help us sell our rural properties that have conservation covenants on it. And we're also involved in their grant program as a not-for-profit. And out of the blue, I got a phone call from them, and a lady said she'd like to book in a time with me, and which we did, to spend over an hour helping me improve my Google AdWords account. Which has driven huge engagement online for us. Now, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't ask for it, and it just came through. And I have to say, I've become a raving fan, and I'll bore anyone to death who's willing to listen on the virtues of AdWords for us, particularly in the not-for-profit space, where they're particularly affordable. You can set budgets, and the impact on our organisation, cannot be overstated. So, I think that, brand promise is about, these days, often exceeding expectations. It's that surprise and delight aspect that we also try to focus on as well. We do that with our landholders as much as we possibly can. But I think that that's a big component of the sort of the contemporary space. Where you can surprise and delight, and exceed, the everyday. I think that's the place to be.
And so, what are some of the things that you're doing to surprise and delight your customers, your landholders?
Yeah, so we recently had a Landholder event, and for all the talk of the power of social media and online engagement, etc., nothing beats face to face. The opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with someone, and obviously not every business is going to be necessarily in that position to do that, but where they can have face-to-face engagement in whatever form that takes for their various businesses, I think it's such a powerful thing, because nothing beats pressing the flesh and hearing people and talking to them and getting their feedback. And so it was like a focus group, so it kind of served a couple of purposes. But we presented them with these certificates, which was basically, these are individuals in our community that are protecting biodiversity on behalf of all Australians, and they get very little recognition. So what I wanted to do was to implement a strategy that saw them recognised, and they didn't really know how the event was all going to play out. And we had our chairman come up from Sydney and really rewarded them for the work that they'd done, and the feedback that we've had so far has been outstanding. So, I think that being able to, tell people, yes, you've got an event on, you're inviting them along, but then the details and the aspects of that, we didn't tell them everything. We thought we'd keep some of our cards close to our chest. And that worked really well. So I think that's that surprise and delight component.
Yeah, James, I would definitely agree with you. Like most recently with Cellarmasters, one, to get the customer experience ingrained in my marketing team, but also to surprise and delight our customers. We chucked everyone on a delivery truck with our delivery drivers and delivering wine to our customers with a little bag to surprise and delight them with our one of the year, both red and white. And the experience that all the marketers got from actually getting out from behind their desks on the floor to the front line, getting in front of customers, having a conversation, whilst also throwing in a little surprise and delight in was it was just exceptional. Like the feedback that the guys came back with, little nuggets of gold that you wouldn't have otherwise found out were just beyond. So definitely getting in front of customers is.
And I can imagine, Pete, that also something we haven't kind of touched on yet, but talking about the brand promise for your staff, what the internal promise is. I can think back to when I first started working and for companies where, they had a mission statement that used to get trotted out all the time, but none of the staff believed it because they didn't live up to, this grand mission statement. And I think, as you mentioned at the start, we've gone hopefully beyond all of that. But what you're illustrating is the power of actually involving the staff in this promise and making them part of the solution. Right. And I think that's something that I'm trying to do as well.
Living the brand promise rather than just having the brand promise on your, on your internet. On your website, in the brand book, which is in the top drawer, and when you've got to trot it out, just involving it in your communications, and then I think that's a great point, Pete. Is living the brand promise inside the organisation, so that everybody understands they're part of the customer's experience. Jane, from your perspective, how are you surprising and delighting your customers, and to also, what's happening in your company in regards to living that brand promise internally?
Sure. So just for context, I work for Avanade, as you mentioned up front, Alex, and we are a professional services company and we focus on Microsoft technology. Our brand promise is all around designing and delivering innovative digital solutions for our clients and their customers. And so I suppose the two focus words there are innovation and around delivering experiences. So firstly, how do we live that internally? It's a really core value for us, and we're seeing that manifested from the top-down leadership. Every time we have leadership briefings, we talk about the values. I think it really starts with recruitment, so recruiting with people who share these values and developing talent where there's always a touchstone back to that brand promise. So, definitely something we live and breathe. And, a big part of what we do for our customers. So we're quite fortunate to have access to some really leading edge technologies. So we're doing some interesting things around, virtual reality or using sensors for the connected home, connected healthcare, off the back of Internet of Things platforms. So we're and also analytics. So the ability to use data and analytics to predict, predict what a customer wants before they know it themselves, and delighting them with suggestions around what they might want based on what we've learned about them and people like them. So, some really interesting things around technologies, data and predictive analytics, which is a really big and growing field for us.
Pete, if you were to start from a clean slate, how would you go about delivering or creating a brand promise today for a brand?
Yeah, so I think it's all about being very clear on what your value proposition is as a starting point, how you're going to differentiate your service in market. And then back to the original comment at the beginning, just being really authentic and, setting the barriers for what your expectations with your customers are going to be. So don't over-promise and under-deliver. If anything, under-promise and over-deliver if you can. So I think setting out your value prop first as a first protocol, analysing in market what your differences are to your competitors, and then building out your brand.
Pete, we're frozen, and I don't know if we're frozen solid. Has everybody else got me, or am I frozen across the whole board?
No,
I'm frozen.
You're all good.
Well, we have a technical hitch here. I have my full panel that is frozen. We've just been talking about brand promise and how we go about creating the brand promise. And just while we get our panelists back online, just if you could just hold on a moment, and I'm just going to try and get my IT staff to give me a bit of a hand here in unlocking, because I'm not quite sure how to go about Unlocking.
Well, the joys of technology.
We're not, I'm only locked on, I'm okay. What about my rest of my panellists? They're okay. They're locked on screen.
Alex.
Oh, we've lost her.
I was going to fill the gap by just talking while they're.
I'm back on. Wow.
There you are.
That was really scary.
Yeah, you went into the internet black hole.
I did, but I don't know if I was still online or not. I'm here, am I talking, and I don't know if anyone's listening. And thank you, and sorry about that. Welcome back.
Alex, I was going to offer to fill the gap by answering your questions.
Thank you.
The audio was all fine, so yeah, just happy to jump in.
Thank you, Jane. Yes, please.
Keep the conversation going. So, the question is, how would you start if you were starting from scratch? How would you go about it? And I think, we're all seeing the emergence and popularity of customer journey mapping now. So, organisations who are happy to throw out the rule book and start with approaches like design thinking, where we get small groups and we sit around a room and we try and design the experience from scratch, without barriers and restrictions, and talk about what could be, what it could be, putting aside, silos and politics and org structure, and thinking about the different personas and giving them a name, a face, a personality, listening, being empathetic, and really a really deep empathy and understanding for what they're looking for out of the experience, and taking that across every touch point and every channel. So I find it a really refreshing technique. It's sort of, the rise of the anthropologist. Suddenly anthropologists are very popular hires within large enterprises who are seeking that deeper understanding of human behaviour.
Having a customer first view is, I think, very relevant to our conversation this morning. And I from the research that I've been reading, and also what we do in the agency, we always start from the customer's journey, and understanding that journey, not just from touch points, not just from external interactions with the brand, but also internally what's happening with the brand. And if you can look at the processes and the systems and the procedures and also the people within the business and start to manage those gaps, that's when I believe that you start to deliver great customer experiences.
And I think it's also important to note, and Jan, I totally agree with you. I think it's a great way of building up that promise by beginning with the journey. I think it's also important to include actual customers within that process, because whilst internally you think you have an understanding of the journey and you've been through it yourself, but getting an actual customer's perspective within those sessions, I find, can also be quite beneficial as part of that mapping.
That is so relevant, Peter. I was speaking to a brand director yesterday, and we were talking about customer purchase journey, and we were talking about how the brand went about that. And unfortunately, again, it was all internalized within the organisation. And yes, they did a little bit of validation, but they weren't going to the customer and asking the customer to map out the journey. So they weren't collecting that really important data around gaps and pain points and what the customer was feeling and thinking and doing in that interaction. It's such an important part.
Yeah, definitely.
James, do you have something in terms of your experience with your customers in terms of developing the promise? How have you gone about, or if you had a clean slate, how would you go about developing a brand promise these days?
Well, in the charity space, obviously, you've got your mission or what it is that you're trying to achieve, and as all of you know, it's a fairly fraught and competitive space. And to get traction and to shout above the din of some of the bigger groups, your Smith families, the Mission Australias, the WWF, Greenpeace, to just name a few. It's very difficult to cut through that noise, and so you've got to find sort of interesting and unusual ways to go about that. And one of the things that we've done is launched a new initiative called Yellow Box, where you could go online and buy a 10 square metre parcel of land for $10. And that was about, we went through quite a degree of, we engaged with our supporters and we engaged with our landholders, and we did quite a lot of research on, what they wanted in terms of how to express what they were wanting to do. And we know that in the environmental space, there's a lot of latent, how do I put this, desire to do something, but how do I do it? How do I actually help the environment? It's such a big problem and I can't solve it. So what we tried to do is to reduce it down to something very small, very achievable and very tangible. So you can go online, you can buy 10 square metres for $10, and then you're linked to that forever. And then attached to that are a whole heap of stories around wildlife and landholder activities that give you a sort of a proxy experience of what it would be like to be out there protecting biodiversity on a large property. So it's been a really challenging space because it's a complex conversation to have, and what we've tried to do is to reduce this down to a fairly simple and articulate a promise that conservation's in everyone's hands. So everyone can participate. It doesn't matter whether you're in a 40-story high-rise in Sydney or you're out the back of Burke. Everyone can do it, and this is a way to do it. So yeah, I just thought I'd illustrate it through an example of what we've done, but it's an ongoing journey, I would say.
James, that's an absolutely perfect example of creating a great experience. And could you tell our viewers where they can get involved with that? Just a little free plug there, because it's one of the most wonderful ways that you've connected the brand to an experience. And something that's emotionally attached to the brand, and a way to get broader stakeholder involvement. And I also would like to say, I think you should be talking to Joseph Pine, who wrote The Experience Economy, who's a pioneer in this space, because I think he would be really interested in that initiative as well.
Yeah, look, thanks, Alex, and I'm always happy to plug Yellow Box. So it's yellowbox.org.au. Look, it's yeah. Sorry, I just went blank. What was?
Oh damn! A live show. Is that big?
Yeah. Look, that happens. It happens to me. Look, I know what I was going to say. Thank you. That gave me the space. So it's the first iteration of this idea. We're now partnering with our sister trusts in Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia. We're hoping to get WA on board eventually. And going out broader to find corporate partners to come on board and use this as a CRM tool to be able to prosecute their support for environmental protection. One of the things that we knew from the get-go is that as a small entity we would not have the resources to be able to market this necessarily in and of ourselves, and we thought, well, if we can use this as a vehicle for business to be able to get on board and partner with us and share the concept very broadly, very widely, then that would take us much further than we could possibly do on our own. So it is something that is a potential collaborative tool, and we've started getting businesses on board, and we're still working on that.
Fantastic. I wanted to turn our attention to technology. because we are all so linked and entrenched, and technology is such a big part of our lives today. And I wanted to ask Jane about technology, specifically about social media and around word of mouth, because now our customers use social media. They use online reviews to post their negative experience and opinions. And I think as marketers, we need to pay very special attention to the gap that's between what's promised and what's delivered. Jane, can you give us some insights on how brands are using social media for what I call social media customer service to help manage negative feedback and to help solve people's problems?
Sure. So doesn't it seem just like yesterday when social media seemed to be the domain of the marketer within the organisation, and it was seen as a channel for, acquisition and engagement. And, I think we're probably still in the early days of understanding how to best leverage it as a channel for customer service as well. I know there's been some research that shows, if you asked about negative comments in particular, Alex, so I know there's some research that shows that for every one negative comment you get online, there's possibly up to 19 other people that share that negative sentiment. And there's a really great book on this by Jay Bayer. You've probably read it. It's called Hug Your Haters.
Yes.
And it's really, yeah. So it's a book that talks about the importance of embracing social media to deal with complaints and detractors, and how you can actually to turn them around. There's also a lot of research that shows that someone who's had a complaint that's been dealt with very well can turn from being quite neutral or negative about your brand to being very positive about your brand purely through that experience of a complaint handled well. So I think that's a really important lesson. I think being, fast and responsive, not ignoring those negative reviews and not engaging, I think is a big mistake. But I think some basic techniques about understanding when and how to engage, and that's quickly, and that's always, that's having the right message, the right empathy, recognising, showing you've actually read the message and that you care, and knowing when it's the right time to take that negativity off to, a private message.
Yes.
Or
agree. 100%, Jane. I agree with you totally. I think having lived through the Vodafone experience whilst at Vodafone in the communications team and working with the social guys, I think the points you mentioned on timeliness and hugging your haters, so to speak, some of the people that were responding with quite an immense amount of hate and distrust for the company, once we allayed their fears and let them know when the network was going to be updated in their area in a timely manner, these customers have since turned around to be some of the strongest, most well liked, and actually advocating Vodafone services now and pushing them out there for the company. So I totally agree with you 100% on that one.
Because the customer today doesn't distinguish between channels. They don't say, "Oh, I need to pick up the phone and call customer service." They're online. They're they're on their Facebook or in Twitter, and they want to connect with the brand about an issue or a problem that they have in the channel that they choose to. And I think there is a lot of work still for brands to make that next step in regards to creating a seamless experience from customer service, physical customer service, to online customer service, or vice versa, online to customer to physical customer service, so that the customer isn't having to repeat the same problem over and over and over again. James, have you experienced that yourself, where you've gone to one touch point to explain a problem, and then you've had to call another division to explain the same problem, and then go to somewhere else within the company to have that problem sorted?
Look, I have actually with our database company through that we utilise, which has been a source of some pain, I have to say. But just to pick up on Pete Jane's points, we've used social media particularly successfully, and it's a great opportunity in the charity space. But it's actually amazing. The number of people that both come out in support of you, obviously, and saying lovely things, but there are those that actually launch, unbelievable diatribes that are negative, that have absolutely zero basis in fact, but just have made some decision that your charity is some kind of rort, and that you're ripping people off and taking money from them and going and buying a yacht in the Bahamas. And I'd love to read that book, Hug Your Haters, but it's been something that I've quite intuitively sought to bring them around through our team to engage with them and to try and change that. But what I've also observed, and I don't know if this is true of the other panellists, some of our other supporters do that job for us. Quite uninvited, they become our defenders when they see us being unreasonably attacked, and so I've been fascinated watching that sort of process of your sort of, I guess, brand advocates stepping into the fray and coming to your defence, and I'd be interested in what other people's experiences have been of that sort of situation.
100%, James. So, again, I think I've noticed that too, especially at Vodafone through the Vodafone experience. When we were updating customers and giving them regular updates on the network rollouts, in the end, customers were actually protecting their brand as such, and communicating back to the haters about we've had an update, you should have received your update, and doing the job that our social media guys were also doing, but from a customer's perspective, it came across with so much more authenticity that a fellow customer was giving that feedback back to someone else who was having a bad experience. So, and that only sort of builds and gains momentum as those conversations are happening within that space, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes I think an interesting...
and so...
Over to you, Jane.
Sometimes I think an interesting way to think about your response is, particularly around social channels, is bringing it back to a real physical, real life forum and saying to yourself, how would I deal with this person if they were accosting me on the street or in a public place with, wild, sort of unfair, emotional attacks? And, what would you do? Well, you would be respectful and polite and empathetic. And you might think about, if they're being particularly aggressive or, aggravated, rude attacks, you might suggest that there's a time and a place and a different forum where you might sit down and have a conversation away from that moment. And I find that an interesting way to think of many digital experiences. How would this play out in real life? What would be creepy? How would you respond to it? And, so I think sometimes we lose sort of the humanity or the real life. How does this really feel when we're thinking about being too clever with digital responses? So that's something, that's a lens I like to look at this type of situation through.
Well, unfortunately, we're up for time at the moment, and we have so much more to talk about. I have many more questions, but my promise to my viewers is 45 minutes, and time is up for this week. And as I said to you, that time flies when you're having great conversations. So thank you all for joining us. I did mention at the top of our show that I had some complimentary books to give away. So if you'd like a copy of my book, Customer Experience is the Brand, then you can go to alexallwood.com.au, and there's a book giveaway button there. And if you use the promotion code word of mouth, That will be open for 45 minutes, and I'll send you a complimentary book. Our next Customer Experience Live Conversations is on the 13th of May at 12 noon at lunchtime. And a big thank you to all of our viewers today, and also our special guest panellists, James, Pete and Jane. I'd like to wish you all a great weekend, and it's goodbye from us.